disrupted.
America to like fuck.
Weird thing to happen. Hello, one and all. Welcome to this edition of Kitz Corner. Open a fantastic day so far. So here's a national tragedy story for you, for a Canadian like myself and other my brothers and sisters in Canada here. Despite all the liberal tactics that they've told you that things are finally kind of getting back to par, we're getting out of the COVID, restriction and the downplay, and no, we're not getting into another depression. It's just a little break. It's a little break. Things are going to get better. Just cancel your Disney Plus account, according to Christian Freeland. Sadly, we're not doing better. As discussed in the Financial Post here, post-haste, Canada's standard of living on track for worst decline in 40 years. And when I see a headline like that, it reminds me, if you've ever have the time to, go look up, there's a documentary called CKLW, The Rise and Fall of the Big Eight. It's about radio broadcasters and how they re-innovized the news in the 1970s and how they used to be a powerful force to bring a story and the verbiage they use. It reminds me of those days where when they talked about Detroit having high murder rates and they say, "Congratulations, Detroit, you can be fully ashamed of yourself." You used to just blurt that out right on the radio, just right to people, and it stuck with people. That was an effective way to tell the news because, congratulations, you screwed yourself over. You have a high crime rate. Just like I could say here, congratulations, Canada. We should be embarrassed. We should be embarrassed of ourselves that our standard of living has dropped in the worst decline in 40 years. 40 years. And it says slump in the GDP per person threatens to be the longest and largest since 1985, a new study shows. Measures Canada's gross domestic product by aggregate, and it doesn't look so bad, but measure it by person per capita, and it's dismissal. For example, between 2000 and 2023, Canada had the second highest rate of aggregate GDP growth in the G7, but one of the lowest growth rates per person. When a country has a population surge, as Canada has, economists say measuring by person gives a better picture of its standard of living. And according to a new study by Fraser Institute, that standard is heading for its biggest decline in 40 years. The study by Grady Monroe, Jason Clemens, and Miglos Palacios looks at the three worst periods of decline and recovery of real GDP per person in the country since 1985. There have been between 1989 and 1994, years that included a recession between 2008 and 2011, and the aftermath of the great financial crisis, and this last that began in 2019. This latest period is unique because even though the GDP per person recovered for 1 quarter in mid-2022, it immediately began to decline again, and by the end of 2023, was well below where it was in 2019. So there's many theories on why this could be. Could it be the fact that instead of investing our tax dollars and our revenue into Canada and building up our infrastructure, building up our job and our security and border protection, we sent that money to foreign countries that are even more corrupted than we are? Could that be the problem? I would consider that a highly suspicious problem. That why we have mass inflation, why cost of living is skyrocketing, why we have a homelessness epidemic, because we're just surging money to the worst things imaginable that's causing more disaster overseas and not helping us. That could be one of the things. Could also be the fact that the mandates and COVID has shut down, basically 70% of small businesses here in Canada. Just in Toronto alone, they shut down 2/3 of small businesses and will never cease to exist. It could be many different reasons there, but I'm not allowed to speculate on that because, I'm not the economist that they claim to get. This lack of meaningful recovery suggests that the Since mid-2019, Canada has experienced one of the longest and deepest declines in real GDP per person since 1985, said the study's authors. Between April of 2019 and the end of 2023, when the last data was available, inflation adjusted per person GDP fell 3% from 59,905 to 58,111. That is surpassed only by declines in 1989 to 1992, when GDP per person fell 5.3% in the financial crisis, and it fell in 5.2%, says the study says. The latest decline has lasted 18 quarters, making it the second longest in the past 40 years. Only the decline of 1989 to 1994, which lasted 21 quarters, was longer. Key, though, are signs that it's not over yet. GDP per person in the fourth quarter of 2023 was down 0.8% from the quarter before, suggesting it is still on a downward track, said the study. The decline in income since the second quarter of 2019 is ongoing and may still exceed the downturn of the late 1980s and early 1990s in length and depth of the decline. If per capita GDP does not recover in 2024, this period may be the longest and largest decline in per person GDP over the last 4 decades. Fraser Institute is not alone in flagging this problem. In a recent article for the Financial Times, Rishir Sharma, chair of the Rockefeller International, identified Canada as one of the countries that has suffered a steep decline in real per capita income growth and a drop in the share of global GDP. So even Rockefeller centers, Rockefeller International, this big conglomeracy, is concerned about Canada. They're concerned that we're screwing ourselves over because our loony government, or circus act that's overpowering government right now, is squeezing this country dry and sending it overseas and doing the worst for people. We're not doing any investments to any of the people here in Canada. We're not providing services for our veterans. We're not building infrastructure. We're not building roadways. We're not building homes, which is why we have a home ownership economic crisis right now, which is why we have a crisis on top of other crises. We're not doing anything really for our own country. It's a downward climb. And you know it's bad when a huge global conglomerate is also stating this. A leader among the so-called breakdown nations, Canada's GDP per capita has been falling 0.4% a year since 2020, the worst rate among 50 developed economies. Widely admired for how it weathered the global financial crisis of 2008, Canada missed the boat when the world moved on, driven by big tech companies instead of commodities, wrote Sharma. The new investment and job growth are being driven mainly by the government. Not only does Canada lag most developed economies, Canada provinces also fall far behind almost all U.S. states, said Trevor Trombe, a professor of economics at the University of Calgary, in a column last year for The Hub. Ontario last year had a per-person level of economic output similar to Alabama, said Tombe. The Maritimes were below Mississippi. The Maritimes are worse than Mississippi. Again, congratulations, Canada. We should be embarrassed for this. We're worse off than rednecks in Mississippi. I can't believe we did it. And Quebec and Manitoba lag West Virginia. Canada's strongest economy, Alberta, beats the U.S. average, but ranked 14th overall. It's roughly compared to New Jersey and Texas, but 13% below California and nearly 1/4 below New York, wrote Tombe. And here's just a little example of this. This is a figure that I pulled out. This is statistics from the Quality of Life Index per country. This is like the worldwide statistics board. And they stated, so back in 2013, Canada was ranked number 5 of quality of life. compared to Switzerland, Germany, United States, and Sweden. We were number 5, just above the UAE. And now, from 2013 to 2024, this year, we have dropped significantly down to 33. To 33. And we're just above Israel, Slovakia, Cyprus, and South Korea. We're just somewhat below France and Latvia. And I know that France is not doing well either. That's why they're protesting heavily on, Macron and his governance, because this is the outcome of neoliberalism, that it's going to shit our country bad. It's going to screw over its people, but it's going to make the governments, it's going to make the oligarchy even richer. And that's why they endorse more neoliberal tactics and neoliberal figures like Justin Trudeau and Emmanuel Macron and Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. Yeah, they may look, stylish and diverse on the outside, but in the inside, they are ghouls. They are absolute ghouls out to destruct and destroy our nations on the behest of global corporations and global compliance. People like the WEF, that's where these people came from. They came from the World Economic Forum. They even mentioned Justin Trudeau. We had to penetrate the Canadian Parliament and install our figureheads to take control of Canada. And this is the direction where they're taking the nation. So, like I said, congratulations, Canada. We really screwed ourselves over. Concerning the fact that we are in the worst economic crisis in 40 years. That should be a statistic that keeps you up at night. On top, anything else right now. That all that we are doing right now, all the slush funds for war, all the, building up the establishment even more, putting mandates, putting the authoritarian measures when it came to COVID, all this came to the outcome of destroying the nation, destroying its people, destroying the civility and the population of Canada. I mean, the fact that the Maritimes are getting beaten out by Mississippi. And it's funny that Mississippi has housing for the homeless. So I kind of feel better for Mississippi than I do about the Maritimes. And considering the direction that we're going down, it's going to get even worse until we point it out, until we unite together, as this t-shirt says. United we stand, divided we die. And call this all out. Because it's going to get worse, folks. It's going to get worse. And it's going to be a tailspin down that rabbit hole, down the cyclonic neoliberalism bubble that's going to eventually take us all down with it. It's just absolutely insanely crazy. This is brought to you by Ground News, the versatile news app and website that gathers all the world's media on one place and allows users to compare coverage. Ground News gives you the access of thousands of sources worldwide, allows you to see the media blind spots, and even gives analysis on the bias and factuality of those stories. Weave your way through the mainstream narratives, the corporate lies, and have total access to find complete information that you deserve. Click on the link below and get 15% off a subscription. Be critical, be informed, be ground.